The council chamber floated in the darkness of space, orbiting two massive stars that burned blue and white. Inside the enormous dome, 57 species gathered to discuss the war that was killing them. The seats formed circles within circles, rising up like a theater. The most important species sat in the front. The powerful ones, the old ones, the ones who had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. In the very back row, almost hidden in shadow, sat two humans. Captain Day wore his military uniform, dark blue with silver buttons. He sat perfectly still, his hands folded on the table in front of him. Next to him, Ambassador Hana typed notes on a small tablet. Her face showed nothing, but Day knew she was frustrated. They had been here for 47 days. 47 days of listening to the council argue while worlds burned. The Vryn have taken another system, announced Councillor Vex, a tall being covered in golden feathers. His voice echoed through the chamber. They destroyed our defense fleet in 6 hours. 3,000 ships lost. Murmurs rippled through the assembled species. Some clicked their mandibles. Others hummed in low frequencies. The insectoid General Wynn stood, his forearms spreading wide. "We must send more fleets," Wynn said. "Bigger fleets. We outnumber them 10 to 1. We have better technology. We will overwhelm them with our superior forces." Ambassador Hana raised her hand. No one looked at her. She cleared her throat and stood. "If I may speak." "The human wishes to address the council," Vex interrupted, his tone making it clear what he thought of that. Laughter rippled through the front rows. "Does Earth have wisdom to share? Perhaps you will throw rocks at the Vryn?" More laughter. Hana's face turned red, but she kept her voice steady. "We have studied the Vryn attack patterns. We believe we can help." "Help?" Vex's feathers ruffled. "Your species still uses chemical propulsion. You have no shield technology. Your weapons are, what do you call them? Bullets?" He said the word like it was funny. "Little pieces of metal you shoot at each other." A massive screen appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed footage from Earth's history, tanks rolling across mud, soldiers running through trenches, explosions of smoke and fire, ancient, primitive, brutal. "This is human warfare," Vex continued. "This is how they fought just 400 years ago. They are babies in the galactic community. What could they possibly teach us?" Day's jaw tightened. Hana looked back at him and he shook his head slightly. "Not yet. We have experience with—" Hana tried again. "Experience with losing," another counselor called out. "Your own history shows you spent thousands of years killing each other. You nearly destroyed your own planet 3 times, and you want to advise us?" The vote was called. Should humanity be allowed to contribute to the war effort? 56 voted no. Only Earth voted yes. Hana sat down slowly. Dee leaned close to her. "They're going to lose," he whispered, "and they won't know why." The council returned to their debate. They talked about honor, about proper military tactics, about the rules of engagement that civilized species followed. They discussed formations that had been used for 3,000 years. They argued about which fleet should have the honor of leading the next assault. Day stopped listening to the words. Instead, he watched the tactical displays that showed Vryn movements. He had been watching them for weeks, and he saw something the council didn't see. Something they refused to see because it didn't fit their understanding of how war should work. The Vryn weren't following rules. They didn't care about honor. They attacked supply lines instead of military bases. They retreated when they were winning, just to lure enemy fleets into traps. They used captured ships as bombs. They targeted communication centers, food supplies, water treatment plants. It was dirty fighting. Brutal fighting. The kind of fighting that won wars. The kind of fighting humans had perfected over 10,000 years of killing each other. "General Wynn," Day said, standing. His voice was quiet, but it carried. "May I ask a question?" Wynn's compound eyes focused on him. "The human may ask. When the Vryn attacked the Kelsor system, they sent their main fleet against your strongest defense position. Correct?" "Yes, they were foolish. We destroyed many of their ships. But while you were fighting that fleet, where were your supply depots?" Wynn hesitated. "Behind our lines. Protected by—" His voice trailed off. "By nothing," Day finished. "Because you sent everything to fight the main fleet. And the Vryn sent a small force to destroy your supplies. You won the battle but had to retreat because you had no fuel, no ammunition, no food." Silence filled the chamber. "That is dishonorable," Vex said. "Civilized species do not attack supply lines. We fight fleet to fleet, warrior to warrior, and the Vryn are winning." Day said simply. Enough. Wynn's voice boomed. We do not need human opinions. We have fought wars for millennia. We know what we are doing. With respect, General, you're losing. The chamber erupted. Counselors shouted. Some called for the humans to be removed. Others defended their right to speak, though not their words. Ambassador Hana pulled Day back to his seat. Her tablet buzzed with a message from Earth. She read it and showed him the screen. Wait, watch, document everything. That night, in their small quarters on the station, Day and Hana reviewed the Council's battle plans for the next engagement. The fleet would attack the Vryn position at HFY 9, a mining system rich in minerals. They're going to lose, Day said, pointing at the tactical map. Look, they're sending their fleets in 3 waves, spaced 2 hours apart. Textbook assault doctrine. The Vryn will see it coming from a light year away. The Council won't listen, Hana said tiredly. They think we're primitives playing with fire. Maybe we are, Day said. But we know fire. We've been burned by it enough times to learn. He zoomed in on the map, tracing possible Vryn movements. They'll fake a retreat here. The Council will pursue breaking formation. Then the Vryn will hit them from 3 sides. It's a classic hammer and anvil. Humans were doing this 3,000 years ago. Should we warn them? They won't listen. They never do. Day sat back. But we'll document it. Every move. Every mistake. And when they're desperate enough, when they've lost enough people, maybe then they'll listen. Hana looked at the casualty reports scrolling across her screen. Thousands dead, millions displaced, entire worlds burned. How many have to die before they put aside their pride? She asked quietly. Day had no answer. He just watched the tactical displays, seeing the future the Council refused to see. In his mind, he planned. He calculated. He prepared for the day when humanity would finally be allowed to show what they had learned from centuries of their own bloody history. That day was coming. He could feel it. The Council's perfect formations and honorable tactics were about to meet an enemy that didn't care about any of that. And somewhere in deep space, Earth was mobilizing, quietly, secretly, building fleets the Council knew nothing about. Because humans had learned one lesson that the galaxy had forgotten. When someone threatens to destroy you, honor means nothing. Rules mean nothing. Only survival matters, and humanity knew how to survive. The mining colonies of HFY 9 orbited a dying red star. 12 billion tons of rare minerals were processed here every year. 4 million workers lived in the habitat rings that circled the system's 3 planets. The Council had sent 3 full fleets to defend it. 9,000 warships, the largest military force assembled in 50 years. Commander Tay stood on the bridge of the Council flagship, watching the tactical displays. He wasn't supposed to be here. Earth had no official military presence in the war. But General Wynn had quietly requested human observers, though he never said so publicly. Tay suspected Wynn was smarter than he let on. Vryn fleet detected, the sensor officer announced. 3,000 ships. They're heading straight for our center formation. Admiral Kor, a massive reptilian covered in red scales, studied the display. Good. They're being direct, honorable. We outnumber them 3-1. This will be a quick victory. Tay said nothing, but his fingers moved across his personal tablet, recording everything. All ships, attack formation Delta, Kor commanded. We'll meet them head-on. Show them the might of the Council. The Council fleets moved into position, forming 3 perfect lines, each ship in its designated place. Textbook military doctrine unchanged for 1,000 years. Tay watched the Vryn approach. Something was wrong. They were coming in too fast, too direct. The Vryn never fought this way. Admiral, Tay said carefully, request permission to speak. The human observer may speak, Kor said, not taking his eyes from the display. This feels like a trap. The Vryn don't usually engage in direct combat. They prefer ambushes, hit-and-run tactics. This is war, Commander, Kor interrupted. Real war, not the chaotic brawls your species engages in. When we fight, we do so with honor and discipline. The fleets collided. Energy weapons lit up the darkness. Explosions blossomed like flowers. Ships on both sides died, but the Council was winning. Their superior numbers and technology were overwhelming the Vryn. Then the Vryn retreated. Victory, Kor roared. Pursue them! Don't let them escape! Wait, Tay said urgently. Admiral, please wait. This could be, but the Council fleets were already moving. breaking their careful formations to chase the fleeing Vryn. They spread out, each captain eager to claim enemy kills. Tay's tablet beeped. His face went pale. Admiral, sensor readings show. The ambush hit from 3 sides. Vryn ships appeared from behind asteroids, from the shadow of planets, from the dead zones where sensors couldn't reach. They had been waiting. The first battle had been bait, nothing more. All ships reform. Defensive positions. Core shouted, but it was too late. The Council ships were scattered, out of position, vulnerable. Tay watched in horror as the slaughter began. The Vryn didn't target weapons or engines like the Council did, trying to disable ships for honorable surrender. They targeted life support, reactors. They wanted kills, not prisoners. We need to pull back, Tay said. Regroup at the mining stations. Use them for cover. We do not retreat, Core insisted. We stand and fight. You're losing. A massive explosion rocked the flagship. Red emergency lights flooded the bridge. Elsewhere in the system, Private Minho recorded everything through his helmet camera. He was a Marine, assigned to protect one of the habitat rings. He was 19 years old and had joined the Earth military 6 months ago. Now he was watching the largest space battle in history, and the good guys were dying. This is insane, his sergeant muttered. They're just sitting there taking hits. Why don't they scatter? Use the asteroids for cover? That's not how they fight, Minho said, still recording. They think it's dishonorable. 3 Council ships exploded in the distance. Bright flashes against the dark. Honor doesn't matter if you're dead, the sergeant said. The battle lasted 16 hours. When it ended, the Council had lost 4,000 ships. The Vryn lost 800. By the Council's math, that was a victory. They had destroyed more enemy ships, but the Vryn had achieved their objective. The mining colonies were cut off. No supplies could get in, no reinforcements. The 4 million workers were trapped. On the flagship's damaged bridge, Commander Tay stood before Admiral Core. I warned you, Tay said quietly. 8 hours before the ambush, I told you they would retreat and counterattack from the flanks. I showed you the sensor data, the asteroid positions, everything. Core's scales had lost their shine. He looked old. Your tactics are dishonorable. We cannot fight that way. Then you cannot win. Better to die with honor than live with shame. Tell that to the 40,000 soldiers who died today, Tay said. Tell that to their families. Tell them their deaths were necessary to preserve honor. Core had no answer. Dr. Suji worked in the medical bay, examining Vryn bodies recovered from destroyed ships. She was a xenobiologist specialized in alien life forms. What she found surprised her. The Vryn were fragile. Their bones broke easily. Their organs were vulnerable. They had no natural armor, no enhanced strength. Biologically, they were weaker than most galactic species, so how are they winning? She muttered, recording her findings. She pulled up tactical data, cross-referencing it with biological information. Then she saw it. The Vryn won because they were smart. They used tactics. They studied their enemies. They found weaknesses and exploited them ruthlessly, just like humans. She sent her report to Commander Tay immediately. 3 days after the battle, the Council held an emergency session. The humans were allowed to attend but not to speak. They sat in their back row seats and listened. We must send more fleets to Hesper 9, Counselor Vex insisted. Rescue the colonies. We cannot abandon 4 million souls. The Vryn control the system, General Wynn said. Any rescue fleet will be destroyed. We need time to prepare, to gather our forces properly. How much time? Another counselor asked. 6 months. Perhaps a year. The colonies will starve in 3 months, the argument continued. Plans were proposed and rejected. Some wanted to attack immediately. Others wanted to negotiate. No one could agree. In the back row, Private Minho watched his helmet camera footage on a small screen. He had captured the entire battle. Every mistake. Every preventable death. He had footage of the Vryn using captured Council weapons, turning the Council's own technology against them. We should show them this, Minho whispered to Commander Tay. They won't watch it, Tay replied. They don't want to see the truth. Then what do? We wait, we document, and when they're ready to listen, we'll be ready to teach. But Tay wondered how many more would die before that day came. How many worlds would burn? How many people would suffer because the Council was too proud to admit they needed help? On his personal terminal, encrypted messages from Earth continued to arrive. The planet was mobilizing. Ships were being built, soldiers were being trained. But Earth's government had made one thing clear: they would not beg to help. They would not force their assistance on those who didn't want it. They would wait until they were asked or until it was too late. Commander. Tay looked at the tactical maps showing Vryn advances across a dozen systems. He calculated casualties in his head. Projected losses. Timeline to complete Council defeat. 18 months, he estimated. Maybe 20. The Vryn would win this war unless something changed. Admiral Kor approached him after the session ended. Commander Tay, the reptilian said quietly, I want to apologize. You were right. About the ambush. About everything, Tay nodded. Will you listen next time? Kor was silent for a long moment. I want to. But the Council, we have our ways. Our traditions. 3,000 years of military doctrine cannot be changed overnight. Then you'll lose. Perhaps. Kor looked at the stars visible through the chamber's transparent dome. But at least we'll lose honorably. There's no honor in extinction, Tay said and walked away. Private Minho continued recording. His footage would eventually become the most important historical document of the war. But he didn't know that yet. He just knew he was watching good people die for bad reasons, and it made him angry. Dr. Suji continued studying Vryn biology, looking for weaknesses that could be exploited. She found many, but without the authority to implement changes. Her research sat unused in Council databases, and in deep space hidden in the darkness between stars. Earth's first expeditionary fleet completed its construction. 47 ships crewed by volunteers. They waited for orders that might never come. Because humanity had learned patience. They had learned that sometimes you had to let someone fall before they'd accept your hand. Pelion was a garden world. Green oceans, purple forests, cities that gleamed like jewels under a yellow sun. 2 billion people lived there. It was one of the oldest colonies in Council space. Established 4,000 years ago. Beautiful, peaceful, safe, until the Vryn came. Ambassador Hana watched the evacuation reports scroll across her screen. The numbers kept changing. 2 billion people trying to escape on ships that could carry hundreds of thousands. The math was simple and terrible. Most of them wouldn't make it. She sat in her quarters on the Council station watching news feeds from Pelion. Crowds packed the spaceports. Children crying. Families torn apart as some got on ships and others didn't. The elderly volunteering to stay behind so the young could escape. The Council fleets had tried to defend Pelion. They had failed. Again. 300 million people would die when the Vryn arrived. That was the estimate. 300 million because the evacuation wasn't fast enough, wasn't organized enough. Because the Council still fought their clean, honorable war while the Vryn fought to win. Hana had stopped sleeping. She spent her nights reviewing tactical data, studying Vryn movements, trying to find patterns, trying to help even though no one wanted her help. Her door chimed. Captain Day entered, looking as tired as she felt. The Council is meeting in an hour, he said. Emergency session, another one. What will they discuss this time? How to lose more slowly. Dee sat down heavily. Colonel Jiwon sent a message. Earth's fleet is ready. They're waiting for authorization. They'll be waiting forever, Hana said bitterly. The Council won't ask for help? Not from us. They'd rather die. Then we act without permission. Hana looked at him sharply. That could start a diplomatic incident. Earth could be expelled from the Council. What Council? At the rate they're losing, there won't be a Council in 6 months. Dee leaned forward. Hana, people are dying. Millions of them. We have the ability to help. What's more important, political protocol or lives? She knew he was right. She'd known it for weeks. But crossing that line, acting without authorization, it went against everything she'd been trained to do as a diplomat. Let me try one more time, she said. At the emergency session. If they still won't listen. She took a deep breath. Then we do what we have to do. The Council chamber was chaos when she arrived. Councilors shouting at each other. General Wynne had resigned in disgrace. 3 more generals had followed. The military leadership that had failed to stop the Vryn was gone, but no one knew who should replace them. Councilor Vex stood at the center, his golden feathers ruffled and dull. We must request aid from all member species. Every ship, every soldier. This is an existential threat. A vote was called. The formal request for military aid went out to 56 species, not 57. Hana checked the list 3 times. Earth wasn't on it. Even now, even in their desperation, the council couldn't bring themselves to ask humans for help. Something inside her broke. She stood up, walked down from the back row. Her footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. She didn't have permission to approach the center floor. Only senior counselors could stand there. But she walked there anyway, and no one stopped her. "Ambassador Hana," Vex said, surprise in his voice. "You are out of order." "Yes," she said simply. "I am." She pulled out a small data device and activated it. A holographic display appeared above the center floor. Every counselor could see it. "This is Earth's military academy," she said. Her voice was steady, cold. "For the past 3 months, every battle in this war has been studied by our students. They analyze Vryn tactics, they predict outcomes, and they've been right 94% of the time." The display showed tactical maps, battle simulations, predictions. All accurate, all ignored. 3 weeks ago, our academy ran a simulation of a Vryn attack on Pelion. They predicted you would lose. They showed exactly how you would lose. The retreating fleet maneuver, the flanking attack, everything. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Counselors leaned forward, studying the data. "We sent this information to General Wynn's office," Hana continued. "We offered suggestions, ways to defend the planet, evacuation strategies that could have saved everyone." Her voice hardened. "We were ignored." She changed the display. Now it showed casualty estimates, 300 million dead. "This is the price of your pride." Counselor Vex's feathers rose in anger. "If you knew Pelion would fall, why didn't you help? Why did you sit back and watch people die?" Hana's eyes met his. The chamber was absolutely silent. "You never asked," she said softly. "You never listened. And you're still not listening." She dropped a datapad on the floor at Vex's feet. "That contains a complete tactical analysis of how to stop the Vryn. Battle plans, supply chain strategies, psychological warfare techniques, everything you need to win this war." She turned to leave, then stopped. "But you won't use it. Because it's not honorable. Because humans are primitives who couldn't possibly understand real warfare. So keep fighting your clean war. Keep losing. And when the Vryn are burning your homeworlds, remember that we offered to help." The chamber erupted as she walked back to her seat. Half the counselors wanted to study the human data. Half called it arrogance. The argument raged for hours. Hana didn't care anymore. She opened an encrypted channel to Earth. "Colonel Jiwan, this is Ambassador Hana. Authorization code Omega-7 Delta. You are cleared to deploy the fleet. Rules of engagement: protect Council worlds. Engage Vryn forces. Do not wait for Council approval." There was a pause. Then Jiwan's voice came back. "Understood, Ambassador. We're moving out. Ida to Vryn space, 72 hours. Day put a hand on her shoulder. "You just committed an act of war without government approval." "I committed an act of survival," she replied. "If Earth wants to fire me, they can. After we save what's left of the galaxy." Across the galaxy, Lieutenant Boram sat in the cockpit of the smallest, fastest ship humanity had ever built. It was a scout vessel built for one purpose: get in and get out without being detected. Her mission was simple and suicidal: penetrate Vryn space, find their homeworld, and survive long enough to report back. She'd been flying for 6 days, dodging Vryn patrols, hiding in asteroid fields, using every trick human pilots had developed over centuries of combat. The Vryn never saw her. They weren't looking for something so small, so quiet. On the 7th day, she found it. The Vryn homeworld orbited a blue giant star. It was beautiful in a terrible way. Dark purple oceans, red continents, and ships, thousands of ships in orbit, tens of thousands more being built in massive shipyards. Boram's hands shook as she recorded everything. The defenses, the ship patterns, the vulnerabilities. She uploaded the data to her ship's emergency beacon, set to broadcast if she was destroyed. Then she ran, burned her engines at maximum, racing for the edge of the system. Alarm screamed as Vryn ships detected her. They pursued. Energy bolts flashed past her cockpit. "Come on," she whispered to her ship. Just a little farther. She made it to the jump point with 3 seconds to spare. The ship's drive engaged and she vanished into faster-than-light travel. Behind her, 50 Vryn ships arrived at empty space. The data she'd gathered changed everything. Colonel Jiwan received Boram's transmission as his fleet prepared for departure. He studied the Vryn homeworld's location, its defenses. Then he smiled. "They put everything in one place," he said to his officers. All their shipyards, all their construction facilities. One target. That's smart, his tactical officer said. Easy to defend, or easy to destroy, Jiwan replied, if you're willing to take the risk. He looked at the map of council space, at the worlds falling to the Vryn, at Palion, still burning, at the colonies that would fall next. Prepare the fleet, he said. We're not going to defend. We're going to attack. His officers stared at him. Sir, our orders were to protect council worlds, and we will, by taking out the Vryn's ability to make more ships, by hitting them where it hurts. Jiwan's expression was hard. The council fights defensively. They react. They wait for the enemy to move first. That's why they're losing. He pulled up human military history on the display. Ancient battles, Napoleon, Patton, Alexander, winners, all of them. And they all had one thing in common. They attacked. The best defense, Jiwan said, is to destroy your enemy before they can threaten you. That's how humans fight. That's how we've always fought. 47 human ships, small by galactic standards, prepared for departure. They didn't have shields. They didn't have the advanced weapons the Council possessed. But they had something more important. They had experience, 10,000 years of humanity's endless wars. Every mistake, every lesson, every brutal truth about combat, distilled into doctrine and training. And they had people who were tired of watching others die because of pride and protocol. Ambassador Hana sat in the council chamber, watching the debate continue. They were still arguing about whether to even look at her data, still discussing honor and tradition while worlds burned. She'd broken every rule in the book, committed her planet to a war without authorization, sent ships into combat without council approval, and she didn't regret it for a second. Let them argue, she said quietly to Day. While they talk, we act. Somewhere in deep space, Colonel Jiwan's fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed. They were heading not to defend, but to attack. The Vryn fleet approached Talvex Prime, the seat of council power. 300,000 soldiers. 5,000 warships, enough to crush any resistance. The council's remaining fleets retreated, preparing for a final desperate stand. They had 3 days, maybe less. Then, at the edge of sensor range, something appeared. 47 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. They were small, blocky, ugly. Their hulls were covered in welded armor plating. No elegant curves. No decorative elements. They looked like they'd been built in a hurry by people who cared only about function. The Council fleet's sensors analyzed them. No energy shields. Primitive fusion drives. Kinetic weapons that fired metal slugs. Ancient missile systems, what are those? General Wynn asked from the Council flagship. Human vessels, his sensor officer replied. 47 of them. They're moving to engage the Vryn rear fleet. Recall them immediately. They'll be destroyed. Those ships are obsolete. The Vryn will tear them apart. But the human ships didn't respond to hails. They just kept moving, accelerating at speeds that should have torn their crews apart. The inertial dampeners must have been running at maximum. Colonel Jiwan sat in the command chair of the lead human ship. Around him, his crew worked in focused silence. They'd trained for this, prepared for years. Now it was time. Launch the drones, he ordered. 10,000 small objects shot from the human ships, each one no bigger than a person. They moved fast, spreading out in a vast cloud. The Vryn detected them but ignored them. They were too small to be threats. No weapons, no explosives worth worrying about. The Vryn were wrong. The drones swarmed over the Vryn fleet like angry insects. They didn't attack hulls or shields. They targeted sensors, communication arrays, engine exhaust ports, anything vulnerable. Each drone carried small explosive charges, just enough to damage delicate equipment. Suddenly, the Vryn fleet was blind. Ships couldn't communicate with each other. Sensors showed static. The carefully coordinated attack became chaos. Now, Jiwan said quietly, Yunji, do your thing. Specialist Yunji sat at her station, fingers flying over controls. She was an electronic warfare expert. Her job was to make the enemy's technology stop working. And she was very, very good at it. Every radio frequency the Vryn used suddenly filled with noise. Encrypted channels were jammed. Command signals vanished into static. The Vryn fleet, which had operated as one coordinated force, suddenly became 5,000 individual ships with no way to talk to each other. Enemy fleet is scattered, the tactical officer reported. They're trying to reform, but without communications, it's chaos. Good, Jiwan said. Send in the boarding teams. This was the part that would shock the galaxy. 20 small shuttles launched from the human fleet. They didn't attack Vryn warships. Instead, they attached to 12 command vessels like parasites. Magnetic clamps locked on. Cutting torches burned through hulls. Inside those shuttles were human marines led by Captain Day. The Vryn had never experienced boarding actions before. In civilized warfare, you disabled a ship and accepted its surrender. You didn't cut your way inside and fight hand-to-hand. That was barbaric, but humans had been doing it for centuries. Day led his squad through the breach. The Vryn crew inside panicked. They were scientists, engineers, officers, not fighters. They'd never expected enemy soldiers to appear on their bridge. Don't kill them unless they resist, Day ordered. His Marines moved through the ship with practiced efficiency. They weren't there to capture the vessel. They were there to destroy it. Plant the charges on navigation and life support, Day said. 3-minute delay. Let's move. His team worked fast. Explosives placed on critical systems. Then they were gone, racing back to their shuttle. 3 minutes later, the Vryn command ship went dark. No power, no air. Just a floating tomb drifting in space. 12 ships. 12 boarding actions, all successful. The Vryn's command structure collapsed. But the humans weren't done. Sergeant Hyon led ground forces to a council world under siege. The Vryn had landed 100,000 troops, preparing to take the planet. The council's defensive forces fought bravely but predictably. Clear battle lines, designated combat zones, rules of engagement. Hyon didn't care about rules. Plant the mines here, here, and here, he told his squad, pointing at a map. Make them look like natural terrain. When the Vryn advance, they'll walk right over them. That's a civilian area, one of his soldiers objected. The civilians were evacuated yesterday, Hyon replied. Now it's a trap, and the Vryn don't know it yet. Human soldiers didn't wear bright uniforms or march in formation. They wore camouflage. They hid, they set traps. They shot from concealment and disappeared before the enemy could respond. The Vryn had never fought an enemy like this. When they advanced, hidden mines exploded. When they took cover, snipers picked them off from a kilometer away. When they tried to retreat, they found their supply lines cut. It was terrifying, demoralizing. The Vryn soldiers, used to facing honorable opponents, started to panic. In space, Colonel Jiwan watched his tactical display with satisfaction. The Vryn fleet was scattered, confused, unable to coordinate. Now for the finishing move. Bring us around Talvex Prime's sun, he ordered. Maximum acceleration. His crew looked at him in shock. Sir, that's too close. The heat, the radiation, will be significant, Jiwan agreed. But survivable, and it'll give us the speed we need. The human fleet dove toward the binary stars, using their massive gravity to slingshot around at impossible velocities. It was dangerous. 3 ships took damage from the radiation, but they emerged moving faster than any ship in the galaxy, faster than the Vryn could track, faster than the Vryn could defend against. Target the siege platform, Jiwan said calmly. All ships. The Vryn had built an enormous orbital platform above Talvex Prime. From there, they coordinated their entire attack. It was supposed to be invulnerable, protected by shields and hundreds of defensive weapons, but the human fleet was moving too fast. The defensive systems couldn't acquire targets. By the time they fired, the human ships were already past, and 2 human vessels, already damaged from the stellar pass, didn't try to slow down. They were suicide ships, volunteers. Their crews had already evacuated to other vessels. 2 ships, moving at a significant fraction of light speed, hit the siege platform. The explosion could be seen from 3 star systems away. General Wynn watched from the Council flagship, his mandibles clicking in shock. What are they doing? That's winning, Commander Tay said quietly. He stood next to Wynn, observing the battle. They sacrificed 2 ships to destroy the enemy's command center. Now the Vryn fleet has no coordination, no orders, no leadership. But the crews were evacuated before impact. No one died. Tay paused. Except Vryn. Wynn watched the human ships continue their assault. They fought nothing like he'd ever seen. No formations. No predictable patterns. They appeared from unexpected angles. They attacked weak points. They used the environment, asteroids, planets, even stars as weapons. This is how they fight? Wynne asked. This chaos? This isn't chaos, Tay replied. This is controlled violence. Every move is calculated. They just don't fight by rules you understand. It's dishonorable. It's effective. The battle lasted 19 hours. When it ended, the Vryn fleet was destroyed or fleeing. Human casualties, 4,000 soldiers. Vryn casualties, 140,000. The siege of Talvex Prime was broken. In the council chamber, counselors watched the footage in stunned silence. They saw human ships using tactics they'd never imagined. They saw Marines fighting without honor or mercy. They saw warfare stripped of all its civilized trappings, reduced to its core purpose: winning. Counselor Vex found Ambassador Hana in the observation deck. She stood alone, watching the stars. You saved us, he said quietly. We did what was necessary, she replied without turning. Your people fight like demons. No. Hana finally looked at him. We fight like humans. We spent 10,000 years killing each other. We learned what works, and what we learned is simple. In war, you do whatever it takes to survive. Honor is for peacetime. Victory is for war. Vex's feathers drooped. I was wrong about your species. We all were. Yes, Hana agreed. You were. Colonel Jiwan stood on his ship's bridge reviewing casualty reports. 4,000 dead. He knew their names. All of them. Volunteers who'd known the risks. Sir, his communications officer said, we're receiving a message from Earth. High Command wants to know if we need reinforcements. Tell them no, Jiwan replied. Tell them this was only 5% of what we're capable of. And if the Council wants to see the other 95%, they need to start listening. Sergeant Hyan watched Vryn prisoners being processed on the surface. They looked scared, traumatized. They'd expected to fight soldiers like themselves. Instead, they'd face something they couldn't understand or predict. What do we do with them? One of his Marines asked. Treat them well, Hyun said. Feed them. Give them medical care. Show them we're not monsters. He looked at the defeated soldiers. And maybe they'll tell their commanders that humans are not an enemy you want to make. Private Minho's helmet camera had recorded everything. The entire battle. Every tactic. Every moment. He uploaded the footage to Earth's military database and sent a copy to the Council. Let them learn. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Talvex Prime. The galaxy looked different now. Ambassador Hana walked through the Council chambers with her head high. She no longer sat in the back row. Her seat was at the front now, next to the senior counselors. Earth had been granted full membership in the Security Directorate, the Council's most powerful body. The vote had been unanimous. She still remembered the day the Vryn sued for peace. Their delegation had arrived traumatized, their confidence shattered. They'd faced human tactics for 6 months and it had broken them. Not physically, humans had been careful to minimize casualties where possible. But psychologically, the Vryn couldn't handle an enemy they couldn't predict or understand. The peace treaty was generous. No punitive damages, no occupied territories. Just a simple agreement. Stop attacking Council worlds and humanity would stop hunting Vryn fleets. The Vryn had agreed immediately. Now Hana chaired the Military Strategy Committee. It was strange sitting at the head of the table, looking at faces that had once mocked her. Counselor Vex was here too, quieter now, his golden feathers less bright. Ambassador Hana, he said formally, the Council requests that Earth share its military training with our forces. We understand now that our methods are insufficient. Hana nodded. Colonel Jiwan has agreed to establish a joint training facility. We're calling it the Terran Institute of Strategic Warfare. Classes begin next month. How many can it accommodate? Another counselor asked. The first session will accept 40,000 students. Shocked silence filled the room. 40,000? Vex repeated. That's more than we expected. That's how many applied, Hana said. Military officers from every council species. They want to learn, and we're willing to teach. On the planet Kessler 7, construction crews worked around the clock building the new academy. It was massive, designed to train thousands of soldiers simultaneously. Humans supervised the construction, making sure everything met their specifications. Captain Day stood in what would become the main lecture hall. It could seat 200 students. There were 50 halls just like it. He held a data pad with the curriculum. Introduction to Asymmetric Warfare. Psychology of Combat, Unconventional Tactics, Resource Denial Strategies. His class, The Evolution of Human Conflict, had been made mandatory for all first-year students. Nervous? Admiral Jiwan asked, walking up beside him. He'd been promoted after the battle, now commanded all human military forces in Council space. Terrified, Day admitted, teaching alien soldiers how to fight like humans. What could go wrong? Jiwan smiled. They need this. The galaxy has been at peace for so long, they forgot what real war looks like. The Vryn reminded them. Now we make sure they're ready for whatever comes next. The first class of students arrived 2 weeks later, 40,000 soldiers representing 56 species. They wore their formal military uniforms covered in medals and decorations. They looked impressive, professional, proud. Day stood at the front of his lecture hall, looking at 200 alien faces, insectoid, reptilian, avian, aquatic species in environmental suits, all of them staring at him with curiosity and in some cases skepticism. Good morning, he said. My name is Captain Day. I'm going to teach you how to fight. But first I need to know something. He pulled up a holographic display. How many of you knew humanity existed 1 year ago? 3 hands rose. Out of 200. Good, Day said. Remember that feeling. The shock of discovering a threat you didn't know was there. Because that's lesson 1. The most dangerous opponent is the one you don't see coming. He changed the display to show footage from human history. Ancient battles, medieval sieges, world wars, space conflicts. For 10,000 years, humans have been fighting, not against aliens, against ourselves. We perfected warfare on a single planet in thousands of different ways. He paused. And what we learned is simple. War isn't about who has better weapons. It's about who adapts faster. The students leaned forward, paying attention now. Day showed footage from the Battle of Talvex Prime, the drone swarm, the boarding actions, the sacrificial ships. You watched us fight the Vryn. You saw tactics you'd never imagined. Do you know why they worked? He looked around the room. Because the Vryn, like you, fought the same way for thousands of years. They had doctrine, tradition, honor, and we ignored all of it. A reptilian officer raised a clawed hand. But without honor, without rules, warfare becomes chaos, barbarism. Yes, Day agreed. War is barbaric. It's terrible. It's the worst thing intelligent beings can do to each other. But pretending it's something noble, something clean, that gets people killed. Your people, my people, everyone's people. He pulled up casualty statistics. Council losses before human intervention, 847,000 soldiers. After 12,000. This is what happens when you fight to win instead of fighting to look honorable. More people survive. The war ends faster. There's less suffering overall. Day's expression was serious. I'm not saying honor doesn't matter. I'm saying it matters less than living, and if you want to live, you need to think differently. The class was silent. Over the next 6 months, the Terran Institute revolutionized galactic military thinking. Students learned to question everything they'd been taught. They studied human history, analyzing why certain tactics worked and others failed. They practiced improvisation, adapting to changing circumstances instead of following rigid doctrine. General Wynn attended classes personally. The insectoid general, who once commanded the Council's forces with traditional tactics, now sat in a classroom learning from humans a fraction of his age. After one particularly intense simulation exercise, he approached Day. I have a question, Wynn said. When you fight, you show no mercy to the enemy. Yet you treat prisoners with kindness. Why? Day considered his answer carefully. Because the goal isn't to kill people. The goal is to win. And sometimes showing mercy makes you stronger. A defeated enemy who was treated well might become an ally. An enemy who was brutalized will fight forever. The Vryn, Wynn realized. Exactly. We didn't destroy them. We defeated them, then offered peace. Now they're trading partners. In 50 years they might be friends. Day smiled slightly. That's the ultimate victory, turning enemies into allies. Wynn's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Your species is more sophisticated than we realized. We had to be. We spent millennia killing each other. Eventually we learned that making peace was harder than making war, but more valuable. In the council chambers, Ambassador Hana presented the results of the new training program. Military officers from the Institute were already being deployed to Council defense forces. Early reports showed dramatic improvements in effectiveness. The Vryn are not the only threat in the galaxy, she told the assembled counselors. There are others, pirates, rogue states, unknown dangers beyond explored space. The council needs to be ready. And humanity will help us prepare, Counselor Vex said. It wasn't a question. If you want our help, Hana replied. We won't force it on you. But we're here. We're partners now. Real partners. A vote was called. Should the council adopt human military doctrine as standard training? The vote was unanimous, yes. Private Minho's documentary, The Invisible War, premiered at the council's Grand Assembly. He'd edited together footage from the entire conflict. The early dismissals, the devastating losses, the human intervention, the final victory. The documentary won every award the council offered. But more importantly, it became required viewing at the Terran Institute. Students needed to see the cost of pride, the price of ignoring help, the value of humility. Dr. Suji continued her xenobiological research, now with full council funding. She worked on ways to make armor more effective, to improve medical treatment for different species, to understand the biological factors that affected combat performance. Her research saved thousands of lives. Colonel Jiwan, now Admiral Jiwan, stood before the graduating class of the Terran Institute. 40,000 soldiers who had arrived proud and certain of their knowledge. They left humbled but capable. You came here to learn how humans fight, he told them. But that's not really what we taught you. We taught you to think, to adapt, to question assumptions. Those skills matter more than any tactic or strategy. He paused, looking at the sea of alien faces. The galaxy is dangerous. There will be other threats. Other wars. But now you're ready, not because you know what we know, but because you learned how to learn, and that makes you more dangerous than any weapon. The graduates stood as one, saluting him in their various ways. Raised claws, spread wings, lifted tentacles. A unified gesture of respect from 56 different species. 1 year after the Battle of Talvex Prime, Earth's position in the galaxy had completely transformed. From ignored footnote to essential partner, from primitives to teachers, from outsiders to leaders, Ambassador Hana sat in her quarters, reviewing the year's changes. It was overwhelming. Earth now had military agreements with every council species, trade deals, cultural exchanges, diplomatic relationships that would have seemed impossible a year ago. Captain Day visited her carrying 2 cups of tea. We did it, he said, handing her a cup. We made them see us. We saved them, Hana corrected. And in doing so, saved ourselves. Earth isn't alone anymore. We're part of something bigger. Do you think it'll last? The peace?